Time to finish up this Randy Rhoads tribute. I spoke to the owner, and this would be like the fourth or fifth amp of his that I've done. And I've done his 2203 previously, and I've done minor service on his Friedman BE100, which is his favorite. I mentioned that this amp, kind of the one-wire mod in general, kind of leads you to the path of the Friedman. If you follow the topology and what happens as far as the gain stages go in a better implementation of the one-wire mod than you find in this Randy Rhoads. You get to that Friedman level of stuff. I'm not saying that Dave copied anything, but we're all of us working with triodes and pentodes and the way they like to operate. So I'm disconnecting this little alpha pot I temped in here because the replacement has arrived. And I'll leave all that there. Notice this cut wire here? That was not me. That was the previous tech when they changed out that pot to begin with. I spoke a little too soon. We're going to get back to that pot in just a second. First, I had to lift up the board because I want to make a few changes here. Let's see if I can do this with a camera here. Well, I don't think I can. So I'll tell you what I'm about to do, then I'll do it. I'm using this as a pointer to show. Someone gave me some crap in one of the Blues Junior videos because they saw me touching a cap lead with one of these. The amp was discharged. This amp is discharged. I do it on every amp. I mention it in a lot of videos. I can't mention it in every video. It just gets to be too much dead weight per video. This is a bright cap on the volume pot. The owner prefers not having the bright cap based on his other amps. I'm going to remove this bright cap. If he wants one back, we can mount it right on the volume pot. It's a gray box cap, the cheapest chips. So no unvaluing of the limited edition there. The next thing here is there's a cut trace here from where these 470K resistors join. We're going to uncut that trace and we're going to disconnect this brown wire and we're going to run this wire somewhere else. I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me do the little bit of work in this area first. I can't do that with the camera here. All right, beneath the board, that connection is now jumpered, and that extra 470K, rather than going to one of the pots, I'm leaving the shielded wire in place beneath the board in case this ever needs to be put back to factory and the parts will be returned. It's real easy to revert. I'm running it right here in a little loop to this ground right here, which is the cathode ground of the next stage. And that's both the center conductor and the shield of this cable. So this cable is pretty much invisible. It's just a little ground underneath. If anything, it'll shield this area a little bit. And that brown wire, which was on the other side of that 470K resistor, went to pin 7 of V1. It no longer will be needed, and I'll show you why. Almost all the way back together. Notice there is no connection to the wiper of the first volume pot. Before, this volume wiper was going to here, then through this 470K resistor, and then through the brown wire to this grid here. Now this grid right here is equivalent electronically, minus that 1.2K resistor, to this point right here. It's better to have the junction of that wiper with these resistors and then have this 1.2K right there at the grid. So rather than run a wire from here to here, to here, to here, when we only need to go to here, let's move that mountain. That is a lot better. When it comes to high gain paths, the shorter the better. And it doesn't get much shorter than that. There's just enough flex that if this jack comes a little bit loose, this won't go wrong, but yeah, it's tight. Just flipping this over and putting a new ground connection here bought us, that just saved us 2-3 inches right there. And much better than the, it's probably about 12 inches run it used to be. Should sound great. I use with a 1 meg rather than the 470K they had in here. It will make this set of inputs sound better, not to be loaded down quite as much, because this will be going to ground. This will be going through this 470K to ground when this volume is off. It'll just sound a lot better for that channel and won't hurt the sound of this channel at all. In fact, it'll smooth it out just a hair. Should not add any real noise, but let me hook up a speaker and see what this is sounding like. All right, let's do a quick test. This thing is ungodly loud. so I can only do a little bit. I'm going to unplug from the input. You get that hum when I have my hand there. Goes away when my hand's not there. It'll be better when it's shielded. That's a downside of this circuit. The Friedman has the same circuit in place in some of the modes. Essentially, I'm not saying that Dave is just doing a one-wire mod. I'd say that's probably the origin of what he does. But he's got that switched or relayed, so when you're not in that mode, you don't get this hum issue. But in reality, if you have your guitar plugged in, no longer there. After these changes, the noise floor is much lower, and we have a much more usable range on the normal clean channel, not normal channel as in what it was, but there's still that hum because transformers. So I'll try to back off a little bit as devices and things in my way allow. So we have a clean sound now. Got the settings on the amp at noon. This is very loud. Actually, I have my mic pre down a little bit too low. Let me turn that up just a hair. We don't have that exaggerated brightness now on this channel. The amp will still have tons of snarl. We've got less gain on this channel by itself because we are now using, where's my pointer? That 470K here as a voltage divider like in the stock 1959. So this channel is essentially a 1959 super lead just without that bright cap. All right, so that was the 1959 stock channel. I told you it'd still have plenty of high end, plenty of gain, but you do have a clean there now should you wish to have it. This stock amp would not have had that clean. But if we go into the high gain input now, and we combine the two channels, and I can't tell you which to use more of or less of, play around with it. Neither one is full up. Let me put on my headphones and I'll turn it up. I want to point out before we stop with this video. First of all, there's this hum with nothing plugged in. If I touch the chassis, that goes away. When it's back in the cabinet and it's all shielded, that will also go away. Second of all, when I first powered this up, before I did the little bit of playing you just heard, if you can call that playing, this is just too loud for me to deal with. I had no sound. I had hiss, but I had no guitar signal. It's because this cathode wire had just come out. The factory solder joint was really cold, and apparently it's still not very good. It's that lead-free solder that they use. Makes for bad solder joints. So I've got to lift this board, redo that one. Let me do this with a non-metallic thing. That cathode, even though I thought I reflowed it, it's hard to do from the side. I'm going to have to lift the board up, and I have to check all the other connections in the amp. So let me press this one down and move this one, which is the plates for there. Let's see, I'll use the body of this screwdriver. Let's see if any others are problematic in the amp. The others seem okay, but this one just lifted up. Now, I reflowed from the side, but maybe there's a problem with that pad. And I'll find out. Anyway, these are the things I usually check without putting in a video because they're not anything unusual. But this bothered me enough that I thought I should point it out. It's not uncommon on these Marshalls with, and many other amps which have wires going through holes like that, where they use lead-free solder. It's just not very reliable stuff. Well, I lifted the board up and fixed that cathode down here where that wire was bad, that connection, and all the others were fine. This wire was inside a solder joint, but it was not soldered to the solder in that joint. There was a big dome of lead-free solder that just wasn't doing anything other than cocooning this. So that's all fixed. I've not put the board all the way back together yet, but I also decided that because of this 1 meg here, which is after these grid stoppers here, that forms too much of a divider network. This channel by itself was getting a little too clean and lost some of the snarl the amp originally had. So this 470K that was going to ground, I removed that little bridge in there. It's no longer in circuit whatsoever. It just takes off an additional stage of attenuation here with this voltage divider, which is no longer a voltage divider. It just forms a high pass network. So this is what the stock, the second channel, which is just the standard plexi, does. It still has a clean. Just gets louder and grungier faster. Later, I'll do tests playing through the red box so I can hear it with the output without deafening myself. First thing I want to do is I want to bring up all the controls here before I stop for this video. I'll make sure that the amp doesn't have any self-oscillation. So I'm going to be plugged into this channel. The guitar volume is off. I'm going to raise the volume all the way. And I'm going to put that metal cover in place because that'll give us a more realistic idea of the health of the amp. See if those noises diminish. That's better. All right, I'm going to unplug from that channel. You can hear one of the tubes is a little bit ringy. You hear that oscillation wanting to start. That may be a tube. It's V1. Let's see how it does if I bring up the other channel. So this is with all the knobs on the amp dimed and shielding in place. Other than this tube being a little microphonic, the circuit is healthy. That's one of the reasons I hadn't put the board all the way back together, because these things have so much gain that oscillation is actually pretty damn likely. So here's a self noise with the volumes dimed, everything else at noon. That's pretty good. Now this is now have both the volumes halfway up. Remove the metal cover. And just for a fast comparison, what that sounds like with the guitar through it at that same level. This amp is overall sounding very healthy with these changes. I'll go ahead and put it all back together after I do the tests with the red box where I can stand to really hear it at high gain. It's just so much. And I'll talk to the owner about tubes. He may have a stash, which would be really good this year when tubes are at a premium, if they are to be found at all.